Oliver, appreciate the time, man. It's always a pleasure to connect with you. I want to start by talking about what you guys are doing at your investment firm, Aurélien Capital Partners. Can you take us back to the beginning days? Like, what was the motivation behind wanting to start this firm, and how did you decide, like, how to structure the firm?
Yeah, no, appreciate you, Malcolm. I guess it makes sense to kind of start from the beginning. So I was fortunate enough to play at Northwestern University, played soccer there, was an econ major while I played, and was fortunate enough to then be drafted into the MLS. So I was drafted by Real Salt Lake. Gave my shot at the Major League Soccer for about a year. Didn't cut it, but learned a lot through the process. It was also, great preview to what, 12 years later, 13 years later, what I'd be doing and involved in. But always felt blessed to be able to play the game a little bit longer than most people, and be able to play alongside professional athletes was really eye-opening in terms of what I need to do in the next stage of my career. So once I was done playing soccer, I actually started my career at Merrill Lynch with the private bank investment group. Was able to work with a large group that service large family office type clients for the bank, about $3 billion AUM for that team. So that was my first look at how true wealth was built and kept and invested. Um, Something that I hadn't seen in my personal life. My parents are kind of these immigrants, so that was something that I knew I wanted to replicate not only for my clients one day, but for myself. So that really gave me some really great insight. So I was with Merrill Lynch for about 6 years. Left in 2017, but during that time, I was able to build my own client base. And, again, I was about 23, 24 years old. I didn't have folks that could write me a 30, $50 million check to build what I need to do. So my first initial clients, reached back to my playing days and my time at school. Some guys that made the pros in the NFL or were agents in the NFL and NBA that were able to source some clients for me. So started to build a great athlete base of clients. And then I had a really unique client subset that I never thought I'd be part of, but now is probably the biggest part of our wealth management firm is individuals been wrongfully convicted. So
Mm.
working with exonerated individuals who receive massive civil settlements for wrongful convictions, and I've been fortunate enough to bring them out as clients. So those two types of clients, your athletes and some entertainers and your exonerees, was definitely something that wasn't common at Merrill Lynch.
Right.
And so I knew I needed to, for several reasons, just because of the diversity factor of it, right? The different lifestyle needs of these particular clients. I felt it hard to service them where I needed to in a wirehouse system. So I left, started my own IRA, had a couple iterations of it, and that became Aurelian Capital. So now, present day, we have five folks on the team. We manage about 32 households. About a third are professional athletes, a third are exonerated individuals, and the other third are just kind of high net worth individuals that fit the family office model. And we've been able to really curate a great client experience by doing the traditional things like investment management, estate planning, insurance planning, legacy planning, all that, but then also provide them with really unique investment opportunities and alternatives. And that was almost the second part of the business where we got direct offers and opportunities to invest in private equity, venture capital, real estate, and now sports ownership. So which blended perfectly with who the clients are and their passions. So and my own in sports. So that's been the journey to get us here today.
I love it. Before we get too far, man, I want to talk about briefly like the lessons you took away from soccer because you hear a lot of synergies between, how what an athlete learns in their athletic life, how that can transition over, those intangibles can transition over into business and other things. So what did you kind of take away from your MLS career, your soccer career that has helped you in your finance career?
Yeah, my brief MLS career. I think for both, even at the height of when I was in college and all Big Ten, all American, all that. Um, the like the setbacks, right? An injury or not getting the play time that you need or think that you deserve, or getting cut from your team and the dream is over. It's about that resilience, that the belief in yourself. And I think every time I had a setback, I became more determined to be successful in whatever the next thing was going to be, whether it was, hey, I'm gonna get more playing time, or yeah, and I was a forward, so I'm like, I'm gonna get that goal, or I'm gonna score next game. Because as a forward, man, even when you win the game, you feel like you lost if you don't score a goal, right? That Ronaldo mentality almost, where
Mhm.
you're happy that the team won, but like, man, I didn't do, you feel like you didn't do your part. So that constant resilience, that hunger to score, the hunger to win, um, that competitiveness, I don't think ever goes away, as you know, as an athlete. So I think that portion, the setbacks and how you bounce back, I think it makes it a little bit different for athletes, even when we enter the professional career where you don't close a certain deal or a certain client, your head doesn't stay down for too long because you learn like you gotta pick your head back up, you gotta keep going. So that part was probably the most important thing that I learned from sports and soccer specifically, especially once the dream, the playing days are over. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, I got to redefine who I am, got to redefine my next goals. And I think I was well prepared, for that, going to Northwestern, having the family that I have, where education and was really the driver of everything. You set yourself up for long-term success. I picked my head up pretty quickly as soon as I was, done playing. And yeah, was starting to, in my mind, almost build out exactly what I wanted to have happen, which was I want to work with athletes. I want to work with people like myself, who want to kind of be the first ones to kick the door down, have access to things that wouldn't traditionally be there for us, as athletes and as well as, Black investors, and and be able to build that into opportunities that eventually would lead me back to sports,
Yeah.
the athlete or involved with the team. I didn't think it was going to happen this quickly, or I wouldn't even say smoothly, just because what's happened, I think, just externally in the world and just sports have become an absolute monster. And the fact that my natural skills and life experiences now lends to that in the investment world has just been a real blessing. So it's been a really great ride, and I'm excited to just keep it going.
For sure. Mentioning sports as an asset class and a huge opportunity. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of activity around it in this day and age. What would you say is the most appealing aspect of that for you? Is it like the media rights? Is it the technological innovation? Like what kind of struck your eye when you were looking at this asset class?
It's interesting, right? Like, as a fan of the sport, naturally, it's the actual ownership piece. It's being able to put, and I think what people are now know is that owning a sports team is like owning a media entertainment company, right? It's you're putting the players, the game, that's a product, just like a movie is or a TV show is, right? So I love the product. I love the game, right? And being able to be the operator or the group that puts out the product to entertain the fans, right? To galvanize a community and have that feeling and sit in the owner's box. That's what I always loved and was drawn to, because I will always love the sport first. And but it has evolved as I learned and understood the business of sports as well, where a lot of these teams aren't making money. And so
Yeah.
these owners and these wealthy families that traditionally have owned these teams, this was a passion investment for them. And whether they lost or won, they would still love the team. Now it has become an ROI type of business with private equity money, institutional money, and more private investors coming in that are looking to actually make money off of this. So now I always loved the sport and the product is what drove me to love it. But now I understand, hey, you gotta return value. And I think in sports, the best way to return value, which also goes outside of just traditional, just sports, but traditional assets. The real estate portion
Mm.
is where if I can own the team and I can own the property, the real estate that the product is being placed on, well, that's generating cash, right? I always tell my clients like, appreciation on stocks or a VC deal, getting multiple there, private equity is great, but cash is always going to be king. Buy real estate, right? Take money out, take equity out, be able to buy apartments, get rental income. That's that's the safe part of the investment. So owning the team is great, and perhaps getting a multiple exit there in the future is wonderful. But then also being able to own the real estate and the adjacent assets that come with it, the commercial districts that you can build, the retail, right, the residential that comes. I live in Chicago, so I see what Wrigley Field has become and around it,
Mm.
right, what the Braves have done down the land on Battery Park. Like that portion of it is now really critical when I look at sports opportunities, along with what is the product that we're buying here as the ownership group. So I would say the real estate portion is actually the kind of secondary thing that's really important now when I look at sports
So,
opportunities.
that makes a lot of sense. And so outside of that, when you're evaluating an opportunity or a deal, obviously, you want that real estate portion somewhat attached to it. Is there anything outside of that that kind of matches the criteria or kind of points of interest that you're looking for when you're evaluating a deal?
So yeah, I would say the real estate always that captures or lessens the downside. So that's always good, right? If the team doesn't perform and there's not the exit value there or liquidity that we can find there, the real estate's always generating something.
Hmm.
Now, alongside that, the deals that we've really liked where maybe there's not a real estate portion of it have been the deals where there's a lot of media rights and growth in it as well. Um, we see what the NBA has done this brilliantly in terms of their capture of the media rights and how much more continue. Obviously, NFL has always been the king at that, but we've seen the trajectory that the NBA media rights have done. And when you look at even emerging teams or emerging leagues that we participated in, like the Tomorrow Sports TGL and SailGP, you see how much the media product that people want to watch and right where are we? We're all on screens now, and how easy it is to access sports and view sports. No one, your game's not going to grow if you don't have you don't have any media rights or can get it on screen. So any sport that has can grab eyes and then be able to grow on the media side of things, whether that's on a traditional platform or a gaming console. Those are the sports where I think that's the third piece of it, where the media portion of it can really drive the success of the investment as well. Um, MLS is another good example, right? When I was playing, MLS would show maybe one or two games a week on
Yeah.
ESPN2 or ESPN News. Now, right, Apple has, purchased the entire media rights for the league, and you can catch every single game, plus the highlights, plus the commentary. For that to be the case, 13 years after I was playing, it's pretty incredible at what it's done. And even before then, we had to watch soccer with the Champions League final, which now is, you watch on Fox. You have to do pay-per-view to watch that game. When I was a kid growing up in the early 2000s, you couldn't even find the game on.
Yeah.
So it's incredible what the media and then the eyes can do for a game and for the sport. So that's another big asset of sports ownership that we really pay attention to when evaluating opportunities.
You talked about a third of your clients being athletes, and obviously we're seeing an influx of athletes wanting to get into ownership, wanting to have ownership stakes. They're and start setting up their own firms. They're doing a lot more investing, in today's world. What are those conversations like from a high level perspective? Like, do you see a lot of your clients actively seeking these type of opportunities to invest in teams?
I think so, right? It's like anybody, you're comfortable in that space. And as athletes, you can bring value there. Um, the one thing you do have to do as an athlete is respect the people that have done it just like you have, right? If someone is going to talk soccer with me or play soccer with me, they understand that I have put a lot of work into this.
Yeah.
They're new, so therefore, they are going to kind of see to my opinions or my strategy or how I look at things. The same goes with athletes as they transition to like what they want to invest in, period. But especially in sports, they understand that there's it's truly a business behind it. So you have to enter it humbly, and especially with folks that are giving you opportunities to be in those rooms and to invest and listen. But certainly after a certain point, you feel like you can provide real value to that organization, whether that is operationally, brand wise, and just basically be a sounding board within the organization. So I think that gives my athletes a lot of confidence. Like, hey, I want to be involved in sports ownership because I'm an athlete, I understand competition. And then so many of these athletes now are so business savvy. They're basically their own brands at this point. Um, and with the money they've made, they are small cap corporations at this point too. And the teams that they've assembled around them, that we help assemble around them, they know how to operate organizations as well. So that gives them a lot of confidence to be able to invest into sports because
Mhm.
it's always going to be their first love and their first passion. And they think they can provide, and they know they can provide a lot of value. So it's exciting to see them kind of their lights, their eyes kind of light up. Where if I'm investing into a generative AI company, they're like, ah, cool, oh, like we get it, it's nice. Where it's like, hey, we have an opportunity to invest into said MLS team or NWSL team or SailGP. That's like, okay, great, I understand this. I can really provide value and be not be a passive investor, but be more active in
Yeah.
this. And we always want our athletes, especially as they retire or enter retirement, keep an active mind. And if sports can continue to do that, then we want them to invest into those things, just like anything else they're passionate for.
What do you think people get wrong, or like what are the misconceptions around investing in sports from like the conversations that you've had?
It's the amount of because I feel like this has been quite new in the last 2 to 3 years. All of a sudden, there's this influx of opportunities and deal flow because so many people have were invested in these teams or opportunities, and it's their first way to get out as well as these new investors come in. Um, so I think the biggest misconception in sports is that everything works. Like, oh, it's sports, so this league's gonna work. Like, no, it's just like any investment. It can go terribly wrong. You can lose all your money. The league can shut down. The team can be, it can be taken away from you. So it isn't recession proof. I think some are, and I don't think anything is recession proof when they say that, when they use that line, but things are more recession resistant and there's different levels to it. So I think the biggest misconception in sports is that it's quite easy to operate and to make money off of it. When we look at the numbers, like the only league that has consistent or almost all teams are profitable is the NFL, right?
NFL,
And
yeah.
NBA is close behind it. Um, but those are the two mammoths in the room. So I think that's the biggest misconception, especially now as everyone wants to get in and there's so much deal flow. Almost reminds me of the early tech days where like every VC deal was a good deal, and then you realize like only 1 out of 100 actually turned out. And so that's why we're very careful about what we invest in and the spreading the risk. We're like, yes, we want to, just like any portfolio theory, taking the venture theory into play here. You have growth or you have late growth and early stage. The same thing applies for sports. So, invest accordingly. And don't be shocked if a pretty much nascent league that you invested in isn't there anymore in 2 to 3 years, right? Where you know that the NFL and the NBA and MLS now are going to be there forever. So that's the biggest misconception that anything in sports works and there's no risk in it. I think that's right. That people are going to find out pretty quickly in the next, like for the rest of this decade, that some of these things aren't going to pan out.
Yeah, that's really good insight. I totally agree. And, obviously you're operating in that early stage when you talk about sales GP and TGL. These are emerging leagues. Are there any other areas or like niches within the sports asset class that you're bullish on, or you see a lot of opportunity, whether it's like women's sports or like soccer globally, like where you kind of looking?
Yeah, I mean, we as soon as we like our first investments in sports, we looked at the Blue Owl Fund to get minority stakes in the NBA, so we're able to to do that, which was nice and safe and comfortable. And then we were approached to do Tomorrow Sports, and I never played golf growing up, but now I do, and I love it, like obsessed with it. So understanding, and I grew up with guys that played golf their entire lives, and now they even play more golf than ever as we've gotten older and they have kids, and it's you realize that golf is an old game, but there's so much of an audience that hasn't been captured there. And I started to play the game myself. And so when you have names like Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy behind it, that was a really attractive thing. And I knew the risks. It was an early, stage investment. Um, but the backing was there, so we really liked that. So we ended up going at the holdco level, investing, and it's been great. Now we're looking at joining an expansion franchise efforts here for Chicago. So that was kind of our first, the NBA, TGL, and then by that time, US Sail GP was we were approached for that. Didn't know anything about sailing, but I figured it was kind of the same model. It's a expensive sport. It's a legacy sport. It's not something new like a pickleball where this has been going on for decades or generations. We've been playing both golf and sailing, and quite unique because it brings a higher end type of some viewership and investor. So liked Sail GBP, and we were happy with that. And then the doors kind of opened to getting access to the top five type leagues. And at that point, we liked the emerging leagues where there's an untapped demographic, but it's a sport that is old, and then we love soccer. That I knew again being when I got drafted, the minimum wage was 45, or minimum wage, the salary was
Yeah.
45,000 a year, right? So I'm like, I can't even live off this. So when I was cut, I was like, good, I can go get a job that will pay the bills.
Yeah.
Now where you see the minimums at 350, 400, it's incredible. So just that growth that the MLS is, surpassed viewership, growth viewership for NBA and NHL. Um, like now soccer, I knew soccer was eventually come to the US shores because born and raised in Europe, that is life.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's only so long that the US can ignore the biggest game in the world, especially again once eyes get on it. Once eyes get on it, and these players and these salaries they hear about with Mbappe and what Messi's doing, and now it's in the Saudi league. Like, oh man, this game over there they're playing pays more than the Bills, and everyone loves it. And they have the biggest tournament in the world, and these guys are always playing. So I knew soccer was eventually going to be, I think, the biggest sport outside of football by far here in the US. They'll surpass the NBA.
Wow.
Um, and it's so accessible as well with the youth, right? Everyone plays soccer growing up. It's cheap to play, and it's just going to open up the doors for people that aren't big or tall that can only play football or basketball. So highly bullish on soccer. That's what we're very excited about. Trying to do an MLS deal. And then the women's part, right? That's 50% of the world are women. I grew up in a household with four sisters. I was the only boy. They all played sports, and they played volleyball, they played basketball, they played soccer, and at that they didn't have someone to kind of look up to like we did, right? Or a male athlete like a Jordan or a Tiger. But you could tell eventually when Serena entered the picture that women are about to have a platform for sports as well, and it's exciting to see. And the women rally, just around each other, and I think everyone is seeing that. And so the dream was to get an NWSL and a WNBA, and marry the women's soccer with my theory on soccer.
Mm.
So women's sports, soccer, and these emerging leagues that are an old game, but haven't touched a certain demographic yet, was where I think where there's a lot of value, and those are the opportunities that we're looking at.
For sure. A couple more questions before we wrap up. A lot of people, when they think about sports as an asset class, they only think about emerging leagues and teams, but it could also include sports tech startups, sports marketing
Mhm.
agencies, traditional sports agencies. So, do you see a pathway for Aurelian where you all are investing in opportunities outside of teams and leagues?
Absolutely, absolutely. We did wearable technology, right? That we've invested in before. Status Pro as well,
Yeah.
with the VR. So, again, just using like our own experience, what the modern day athlete wears, right? From just to improve and to peak performance, right? Those technologies are just as important as buying the team. Especially as we were looking at buying teams and building out stadiums, what goes into building a facility,
Yeah.
right? Those products, those services that requires you to run a team are just as important as the actual asset. So anything now that we look at that can be sports adjacent, technology, media platforms, and related to like in-stadium experience,
Hmm.
those are other assets that we're looking to invest in. So I would say right now, like we invested into a fund over in the UK that does a lot of ticketing technology as well. So things like that we're looking at and excited about too, because you can get enamored about just buying the team and being focused on that. But every single all the widgets that go into running that team are just as important and I think very valuable in investing in. Even especially if you could get those companies to also possibly invest into the team or you get equity into having into that product that's providing some sort of experience for either the player or your fans or the organization. So yeah, we're looking at those opportunities as well. Um, but but I think it's all based off of the same model of is it a growth stage company, late
Yeah.
stage, early. The same logic applies when it comes to like those ancillary products in sports.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And lastly, for someone who might be listening to this interview, if maybe they're an angel investor, maybe they're a family office, like what advice would you give them on this asset class and how to approach it appropriately?
Good question, man. It'd be foolish to say approach it like any other asset class because it really isn't. But you would have to try your best to understand that with sports, there is a lot more irrationality
Yeah.
around it because it is fandom. Um, if the iPhone doesn't work, we throw it away. But if your team loses, I'm a Manchester United fan. If your team loses and goes 17th place in the Premier League, I'm still gonna watch them. Like I just like I right. It's different. You have to respect that though. But with that irrationality, you still have to look at the numbers and assess it as if it is just any sort of investment opportunity and asset. But you have to look at it into like almost have rose-colored eyes as well with it. Um, so, and that goes back to my conversation that not every one of these things work. And so you do have to take the normal investment logic or approach to it. Um, but understand that there's something about sports. I think the same thing goes with like food and music. There is passion that could drive it to success or the other way. And so understanding that mix is very, very important. Um, and I think the other big thing that people need to realize before they get in is how do you get out? Like that's also a big thing, right? It's obviously there's some folks that are investing that can hang on to it forever, and that's their intention, and they're able to do that. But my investors aren't, right? The multi-billion dollar families yet. And so there has to be an exit strategy before you invest into a sports team, if that's why you're doing it, as for investment purposes. So a lot of these leagues, again, some of the emerging ones where I see them like, how, yes, very, very sexy, very attractive, but what's going to happen in 3 to 5 years? Are you going to be able to get your money out? And if not, is that league going to generate some sort of income for you? Most of these leagues and teams don't. So it's about knowing, again, taking a logical approach with a little bit of irrationality to it, and then also make sure you know what the end game is when you start to invest in the sports, and how you're actually going to return value.
I love it, man. That's great advice. Lastly, can you let people know where they can connect with you and learn more about Aurelian Capital Partners?
Yeah. So, you can find our information at aureliancapitalpartners.com. You can always connect with me on LinkedIn, Oliver Kupe, Kupe. Outside of that, we're really heavily involved again with our involvement with the Innocence Project and exonerees. So any of those events, we're usually have a presence at. And we always do our best to almost be at every single large sporting event. We'll be at the upcoming Summer League. We host a conference there, to sail GP races and F1 now as well. But yeah, otherwise, LinkedIn, our website also has our information if people want to connect with us.
Appreciate your time, brother. This is great.
Appreciate you, Malcolm.